Hello everyone, and welcome to Region Band Etude Masterclass. Today we're going to be talking about part 2 of Etude number 79, which I'm considering to be the double bar at measure 17 to the end. Make sure to check out the video for part 1, which covers measures 1 through 16. I'm calling this episode Region Band Etude Masterclass because this portion of the Etude actually was the technical Etude for Region Band auditions in Louisville ISD in 2016. Measures 17 through 32 was the audition portion, but we're still going to go over all of 17 to the end here. The rhythms in this part of the Etude are similar to part 1 in that they include plenty of driving eighth notes, but now we are starting to see 16th notes as well. This is why it's so important to feel a subdivided eighth note pulse throughout the piece, so you can know exactly where to place those 16th notes rather than just guessing and rushing through it. As a reminder, in part 1, I suggested a practice tempo of quarter equals 50 with eighth notes on the metronome, or eighth note equals 100 if you like a more neutral sounding click. Since the first two measures of this part of the Etude are kind of a departure from the rhythms of part 1, make sure you're anticipating that transition. Here's what the rhythm of measures 17 and 18 should sound like at eighth note equals 100. 1, and a 2, and a 3, 4, and 1, and a 2, and 3, 4. We also see some quarter notes tied to eighth notes in measures 21 and 22 from beat 2 to beat 3. You know what helps us count through ties? That's right, subdividing. Make sure to listen for all 3 eighth note clicks of the metronome to happen while playing these notes. And if you're subdividing eighth notes, the rest of the rhythms in this piece are pretty straightforward. In part 1, we looked at our key signature of 3 flats and noted that we must be in E flat major. Check part 2 of the Etude out closely. Technically, there's no printed key change, but you'll notice that before we had many phrases that started and ended on E flat, and now we have phrases that start and end on C. In fact, this entire portion of the Etude starts and ends on C. But we still have 3 flats in the key signature from before. This is a good clue that we're not playing in the key of E flat major anymore, and in fact, we're in C minor. C minor has the same key signature as E flat major, but it sounds very different. Here are the E flat major and C minor scales for comparison. You'll also notice that sometimes we'll be playing A flat and B flat as the key signature tells us, but sometimes A natural and B natural are added. This is because this part of the Etude uses a version of the C minor scale called the C melodic minor scale, where A and B are natural coming up, but flat going down, and E is flat the whole time. There's plenty more that could be said on the topic of minor scales and their different types, but that's all you really need to know for now to perform this Etude. If that was a lot of information, don't worry. Our BFF and composer of this Etude, Robert Getchell, actually worked the C melodic minor scale into the Etude, note for note, in order. Check out measures 33 and 34. That's it. That's the C melodic minor scale. To get the best grasp of what the tonality of this part of the Etude sounds like, play through measures 33 and 34 first, then audiate the Etude starting at the double bar. Remember from part 1 that audiate means sing in your head before playing. I know that I'm going to give you a recording of this piece at the end of this video, and you might not even be listening to the masterclass portion of the video, but if you are, really try it. Try audiation, as we call it. I'm going to play the C melodic minor scale as it appears in measures 33 and 34, and then I'll put the music up on the screen again, and you use the notes you hear in the scale to help you hear the notes in the piece before playing through it. Pause the video when the music comes up, put your metronome on eighth note equals 100, and audiate along. You can use the recording at the end of the video to check if you stayed on pitch. This etude is kind of like going on an epic journey. It's exciting at the beginning, there's a more lyrical part, and then we get here at the double bar. Remember that the title of the etude is Bravura, which essentially means moving forward in a brave and heroic fashion and with some technical flair. We are coming out of the sostenuto more lyrical section, but once we hit the double bar, be back to our bravura style. Previously, we discussed phrasing to the E flats on beats 1 and 3 of part 1. Since we're working with the C minor scale now, phrase to the C's in this section. Many of them appear on beat 3 before a rest or on beat 4, so think of phrasing all the way to the end of each idea. We have more variations and dynamics in this section, including fortes, pianos, and even crescendos. Notice that while we have some switching from forte to piano, there are no diminuendos in this piece. So in order to truly play the ink, these pianos should be a surprise to the audience. Similarly, when we reach the end of a forte section, make sure the last note is equally as strong and energetic as the first note, if not even more so. This ties in with what I mentioned about phrasing to the end as well. Whenever we have a crescendo, or diminuendo for that matter, we want to make sure it's a gradual and even change throughout. To help achieve that, find the midpoint of both of these crescendos in the etude. Let's start with measure 20. We're starting at piano and arriving at forte, with a total of 9 notes to take us there, counting the forte C at 21 as the 9th note. This means the 5th note, in this case the F on beat 3, is what we'll consider to be mezzo forte. For our purposes, we'll also consider mezzo forte to be truly medium rather than medium loud. Then do the same thing at 27 and 28. Now we have 17 notes in our crescendo, counting the forte C at 29 as our 17th note, so the F on the downbeat of 28 is our midpoint mezzo forte. When it comes to breathing, some of these musical ideas are resolved after 2 measures, so there are a few places where it's okay to breathe on a bar line, but other than that, we still want to avoid breathing on bar lines. For example, at our practice tempo, you can breathe between 18 and 19, 26 and 27, and 30 and 31. For non-bar line breaths, you can breathe on the last 8th note of the ties at 21 and 22, which can also help you keep those measures in time. You can sneak one after the B on beat 3 of 28, and make the rest of those notes like pickups into 29. And to make 33 and 34 sound like a more musical idea connected to the rest of the line rather than just a scale, avoid breathing on the bar line after 34 and wait until the rest on beat 2 of 35 instead. Since we're starting playing at a slow practice tempo, and since this part of the piece is mostly forte and energetic and requires a lot of air, a few extra sneaky breaths you can take are between the F and the G on beat 3 of measure 20, before the B's in measure 23 and 31, and maybe on the bar line between 29 and 30. You don't have to take all of these breaths, but there's some extra suggestions if you need them. In the part 1 video, I said that the character of the piece reminded me of Harry Potter, but not a very intense part of the story yet. Now we can start to envision something that has more danger and excitement. For example, the piano and crescendo parts can be like sneaking into the forbidden forest, and the forte parts can be like battling the spiders. The minor tonality of this piece lends itself to imagining something more spooky but still upbeat and heroic, like this. I will now give you another highly technological chart with all this on there like I did in part 1. The breaths are in orange, with a larger V for a more strongly suggested breath, and the apostrophe looking symbol for the catch breaths. The phrasing ideas are in turquoise with an arrow pointing to the notes that are phrasing goals. Feel free to pause the video and write all of this on your page as well. Here's part 2 of the etude at our practice tempo of 8th note equals 100. After you've learned the piece, you can also play along with the recording while practicing. Remember to subscribe to my channel. I will also be posting a separate video of the entire etude at a performance tempo. Thank you for listening.